All right, everybody. So we are live, I think. Yes. All right. So welcome to my Facebook Live video. I've never done a Facebook Live or any kind of live video before, so just bear with me, and we'll try and get through without any unforeseen circumstances. So before we start, I'd just like to take a second to thank CASA for initiating these Facebook Live sessions, highlighting the heritage and cultural products of the Gaspé Coast. If you have a product or an activity that needs to be added to their heritage and cultural trail for English speakers, contact Crystal from CASA at 418-375-9070 or by email at crystal@casa-gaspé.com. Now, I have my phone set up on a tripod over there, so I just wanted to see that if I could watch this video at the same time here and kind of get your comments or questions that you might have. If I can't read them for whatever reason, I'll answer any questions that you have at the end of the video. So before we get into building the guitar that we have here, I'd just like to take a second and talk about myself a little bit, if I could. So my name is Alex Armstrong. I'm the creator of Armstrong Custom. So what I do here is I am a luthier. A luthier is just a really, really old word for somebody who builds stringed instruments. So guitar, bass, mandolin, anything like that is typically built by a luthier. A lute, the word luthier comes from the word lute, which is basically the long lost cousin of the acoustic guitar. They date back around 800 years. And before the lute, there were things called a lyre, which were basically small handheld harps. And those date back about 4,500 years. So I feel really blessed to be able to take part in a tradition, an age-old tradition. You know, as long as there have been people, there has been music, and as long as there has been music, there have been people to build the musical instruments. So I feel really blessed to be able to continue on and build creative musical instruments. I try and build a variety of musical instruments here. I primarily build electric guitars, but I have also built ukuleles, mandolins, bass. I built a double neck guitar, a little bit of everything. I try and not build the same instrument twice. So in addition to building a variety of different instruments, I try and use a variety of reclaimed materials and things like that. Old things that you wouldn't necessarily think as a musical instrument, I try and turn them into something musical. So for the first example here, I have what I like to call the canjalele. So this is a ukulele built out of a old oil can, as you can see here. That's a pretty interesting sound. That's not one that you'd get out of a conventional ukulele, that's for sure. So in the same category as the canjalele, I also have this. This here is a 6-string acoustic oil can guitar. So same thing, made of an old oil can. This here is actually a slide guitar. So if you notice, the strings are really high off of the neck here. And that is because this is primarily played with a slide. So I have a few different examples of slides. This here is a glass slide and a steel slide. Slides can also be made out of bone, brass. They can be made out of ceramic. Anything really that... So what happens with a slide is, instead of using a fret to determine where your note is, you use your slide. So the higher up you go with your slide, the higher your note is. This primarily I play as what is called a lap steel. So I either play it on the table or on my lap. And when I play it like that, I use a different kind of slide. It would be this here slide. It's shaped a little funny. This rounded side would go against the guitar, and then your fingers are on top. So I would play it on the table primarily. So in addition to this, I also have a couple of cigar box guitars that I made. This here is one version of the cigar box guitar. This is a 3-string version. Primarily, they're used in open tuning. This is also a slide, so the strings are a little bit higher off, and there aren't actual frets. There are little lines here, but they're not frets like a conventional guitar. And the same thing here, my bridge is a threaded rod, and this side is just a bolt. So trying to reuse as many old things as I can. This here is another example of a cigar box guitar. This one is a longer, also 3-string, also a slide. Strings are up high. And then the same thing, I used a threaded rod and a couple nuts for the bridge, and a threaded rod for the nut. This one here also features a 3-string hand-wound pickup. A lot of winds with very thin copper wire. And then we get into more of the conventional kinds of guitars. So this here is a guitar that I had kicking around the shop for a while. It was just, there wasn't anything special about it, nothing that I really liked about it. So what I did was I took it to the bandsaw and I ended up cutting all of this away. The reason why I did this was to add this here bridge. This is a headless bridge hardware. So the reason I put this in was basically just to cut the headstock off. As you see, like a normal guitar usually would have, this is actually the headstock I cut off of it, would have been up here, and you tune your guitar from up here. Now that I've cut this off, this is now where your strings start and your strings end down on this side, and they are tuned down here at the bridge. There's no real reason for it, it's just personal preference. If some people like to play headless guitars more than headed, some people think they have better balance. It's really all personal preference. And because I cut the head off of it, I gave it this splattered paint job, and I call it the guillotine, because why not? Next here I have another more conventional electric guitar. I call this the Scrapicaster. So it's a Stratocaster style guitar. The first thing you might notice about this is that it looks really old and beat up. That is actually entirely intentional. It took many hours of carving and sanding to get this look. This is called a relic paint job. So it makes it look like a road-worn 1950s style guitar. I took all kinds of things. I took chisels and sandpaper. There were even a few places where I just banged it against a few bricks and stuff, just to give it that kind of look. And in this guitar, is no exception to the others. I use a lot of old things. So for my pick guard here is actually an old Led Zeppelin album. Here, my volume and tone knobs are old 12 gauge shells. And for my pickup selector switch is an actual 45 caliber bullet. The neck is the same thing. This was a brand new neck, and I gave it a relic job so it kind of looks worn in the places your fingers would most commonly be. That's what I call the Scrapicaster. This is also a baritone instrument, so the neck is longer than a conventional guitar. It gives it a deeper sound. And last but not least, I have, this here is a bass that I am currently building. This was a hydro-dipped paint job. If you've never heard of hydro dipping, basically what I did was I took a storage container that was big enough to submerge this guitar into. I filled it up full of water, and I took red, black, and white spray paint and sprayed them in different places on top of the water, and it floats on the water. So then I take by the handle here, and make sure you have it by the handle and not here. You'll get your hand full of paint. I took this and I submerged it into the paint. And once it was completely submerged, I cleared whatever paint was left on the surface, pulled it out, and this is what I was left with. It's a pretty cool little paint job. Very interesting. You can do it with all kinds of stuff, not just guitars. So that's pretty much it for the instruments that I have to show you today. I also take a lot of custom orders. I had a guy who wanted something very specific. He wanted a cigar box guitar, 4-string with a resonator kit. If you've never heard of a resonator guitar, it's a steel cone that goes inside of the body of the guitar, and the sound resonates out of there. It's a very unique sound. He also wanted specific tuners and a kill switch installed, all kinds of really cool stuff. I really liked that build. It was a lot of fun. I've also built a number of things for, I built a couple cigar box guitars for the Route 66 band. If you haven't heard of them, check them out. They are really, really cool. So I've used, that was a little bit more open. They just wanted something to do with the Route 66 band. So I took a regular cigar box guitar, 6-string, and on the cigar box I put a Route 66 license plate. I put a bunch of other little odds and ends into it as well. It was very, very cool. I like doing things like that a lot. Now, before we get into building our guitar here, what we're going to do today is we're going to build a diddly bow. It's not a guitar in the sense of a traditional guitar. A diddly bow is a single-stringed instrument. So what we're going to build here, I'm going to show you how I build this one, and then I'll show you a couple other examples. One of a much more base model, took me about 5 minutes to slap together, and then I'll show you another one that I spent around an hour, hour and a half on. When I was first asked to do this video, I really wasn't sure what to do for 30, 45 minutes. Traditionally guitars, like the can guitars where all I had to do was really make the neck, was still about 20 hours worth of work involved in that. When you get up to the actual guitars like this here, the guillotine, which was more of a custom job, that was probably about 40 hours. And then when we get into a full guitar build, it's 100 hours plus. The double neck I made was probably 150 hours, maybe a little bit more, because there was a lot of experimental things kind of going on in that. So I really wasn't sure what to do when I was asked to do this video. And then I remembered about the diddly bow. Diddly bow is a really, really versatile instrument. It's a very primitive guitar, but it's very, very versatile. It's also an instrument that a kid could build with a little bit of adult supervision. Again, I'll show you how I built this one and the things that I use to build, but I don't encourage you to build it the same way that I do. In fact, I encourage you to go out on YouTube, on Pinterest, on Google, find your own way to do it. There are literally a million different ways to build a diddly bow, and I'm just going to show you how I built this one. There's no hard and fast rule, so I'm just going to change my camera angle here a little bit. Get down to my table here. You'll see that. There we go. Now, we'll go through a few of the materials here that I've set out here. First and foremost, for the body and neck of our instrument, we're going to need a 2x4. I used a 2x4. You don't have to use a 2x4. You can use a 1x4, a board. I've also seen these made out of axe handles, broomsticks, even a paint stick. And if you don't have any of those, I'm sure you can go out and find yourself a stick in the woods, and it would sound just as good. Next, because I am a luthier and I build a lot of guitars and I have a lot of parts laying around, this here is a tuning key from a ukulele, I believe. This is actually a double. There are 2 strings here, but I'm only going to use 1. You could very well use 2, but I'm not sure it's still considered a diddly bow if it has 2 strings. Next, I have a couple of screws to attach this. I have a couple of longer screws here, and I'll show you what those are for in a bit. I have an eye hook here, little eye hook, and 2 nuts that fit the eye hook. Then I have a guitar string. This here, what we're going to be making is an electric diddly bow. So this here is a ceramic piezo pickup. This here is the pickup side, and this here is the jack, which would be plugged into an amp or guitar pedal. And then last I have, this here is the jack cover, which this will be attached to. And I'll show you all that as we get through. The last thing you're going to need, mine happens to be a really cool old Mountain Dew bottle. It says, "It'll tickle your innards" on the top. It also says bottled by Herb and Ruby. I'm not sure how old Mountain Dew is, but I'm pretty sure it's not bottled by Herb and Ruby anymore. Now, to get through a few of the tools, I used a drill, a couple of driver bits, a couple of assorted drill bits, a pair of pliers, not the slide, a chisel, a pencil, and a straight edge. Again, these tools are not necessary. You can do it with fewer tools or no tools at all. I'll just show you how I built this one. The first thing you're going to notice is that my diddly bow body here already has a couple of holes drilled in it. That is simply because I am right now in my wife's sewing room and I didn't want to start drilling and putting sawdust all over her stuff. I'm currently in the process of building my guitar shop, but it's not there yet. So, for the sake of the video, I drilled these holes outside beforehand and then brought them back in, and we'll build it now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark the center of our diddly bow body here. So find the center, and because this is going to be a single stringed instrument, we are going to try and make that string line up along the center line. But again, if it doesn't line up along the center line, don't worry about it at all. It'll still sound just as good. I'm just a little bit finicky like that and like for it to be on center. So there's our center line. Not too bad so far. The next thing I did was I marked about 2.5 inches up from the end, and this is where our tail piece is going to go. So I used a drill bit that was the same size as this eye hook here that we have. Again, you don't have to use an eye hook. You can use a nail, a screw, anything at all to fix that bottle. The length of this should be a little bit lower than your bottle when it's all the way in. Your string is going to be attached to this eye hook, and you want it to run over the bottle and not be higher than the bottle. So this is drilled through here. The next thing I did was I took a slightly larger drill bit right here, which was the same size as the nut that goes on our eye hook, and I turned it over to where the hole came through, and I drilled it in about 1/2 inch, the depth of the nut. And that's just so that that nut is countersunk inside here and isn't sticking out and making our guitar lopsided when it's all finished. So, first thing you're going to do is take that nut and insert it into this hole here that you have countersunk. Then you're going to take this eye hook here. I'm going to thread the other nut almost right up to the top. Pretty much right to the top. We'll just put it to the top and we'll bring it back down after. Then, because my hole that I drilled here is actually pretty tight, I have to thread this eye hook right down until I hit the nut. Like I said, this can be a screw or a nail. It doesn't have to be a threaded rod like this, or an eye hook, sorry. And we're going to just thread it in until we're flush with the bottom of that nut there. Once we're flush, we're going to take this nut that we have all the way up here at the top, and we're just going to tighten it down onto here so that that doesn't move. Alright, so now we have our bridge in place, or our tail piece, sorry. The bridge is actually going to be our bottle. That's going to be the next step. So we're going to set our bottle here, leaning up against our eye hook, somewhere around there. And then we're going to take the 2 longer screws that we have. These here, it really doesn't matter how long they are. They can be longer than the bottle. All these are for is to just kind of secure this bottle in place so that it doesn't go anywhere while we're stringing it up. So I'll put my driver bit into my drill, and we'll just screw these in a little bit. Again, don't worry if these aren't straight. It really doesn't matter. As you can see, mine are pretty crooked. That's alright. All you want to make sure is that these are on either side of your center line, because your string's going to pass here, and you don't want it to sit against one of these these screws, sorry. Now, for safety's sake, we're just going to remove our bottle for now. Now I'm going to take my tuner that I have here, and again, this post is where our string is going to pass through, so I want that to try and be on the center line as much as possible. So we'll just set this on the edge here, change my bit, and we will put a couple of screws into this to hold it in place. Again, guys, don't worry about if it's not perfect, if you're not right on that center line. Like I said, it's not going to change the sound. So there we go. That is fixed in place. So now we have our tail piece, our bridge, our bottle, and our tuner. Now all that's left to do is to install our pickup. This pickup is best used. I bought this on Amazon for about $10. There's 2 double-sided tape on here. I use them a lot in cigar box guitars or ukuleles, banjos, things like that. They stick to the inside. But in this case, we're going to pass our string directly on top of this. So this is going to sit on top of our bottle over here. Now, in order to do that, we're going to take this jack cover. This is called a boat jack cover. It's traditionally used more in a Stratocaster style guitar. And you've seen them, they're recessed like this inside of the guitar body being down here. What I like to do is I like to flip them around so that now it's sticking out of the guitar. You still have to drill a little hole, but it's not nearly as substantial of a hole as what it would have been had it been the other way. Again, this is extra. This is just because I wanted to have this fixed to here. You could just leave this hang here and still plug it in. It would still work just fine. I just like to do a little extra step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this on the side here, about where I want this. You can tell this is quite a short lead, so you want to make sure that when this is in place, you're still going to have enough slack to get it up here on top of the bottle. Once you have it in its place pretty well, give or take, you're going to take your pencil and put a mark here where one screw will be, a mark here where the other screw will be, and then because this is on an angle, you're going to put your pencil in on a rough angle and put a mark here where that jack will ultimately sit. Now we're going to remove that. I took a larger, this is a 3/4 inch drill bit, a Forstner bit, and I drilled it in about 3/4 of an inch. You can actually test this, put it in here and make sure if you're not quite deep enough, you can just drill it a little bit more. The next thing I did for this one, just so that it was a little bit more clean, I'm not sure if you can tell, but I made a little channel here with a chisel, just so that my wire could pass through here underneath the cover, and the cover wouldn't be squishing the wire and cutting it off or anything. So, once you've drilled your hole here, and you have your marks here for the screws, these usually come with a little nut and a washer. We're going to take our nut and our washer off. And we're going to take our jack cover here. And like I said, we're going to use it this way as opposed to the opposite. So we're going to push this in through here like so. And then put our washer and our nut back on it again. Washer and our nut. And you can use these pliers here just to tighten it up so that it's not moving around and you have a nice good connection. Now that that's in its place, I'm going to try and test fit it here and make sure it fits where we want it to go. It should fit because I had it in here before. Just like that. And now we still have slack for this to sit on top of our bottle. Now I'm going to use my drill again and the two small screws to fix our jack cover in its place. One there, and one over here. Whoops. So there you go. Your jack cover is now installed. And now we're done with all of these tools. The only thing left to do now is string it up and put our pickup in its place. So this is just a regular guitar string. If you don't have a guitar string, I've also seen people make these out of just wire, just regular wire. Anything would work. You're still going to get a sound out of it. It might not be quite the same, but that's what makes a diddly bow such a unique instrument. So most guitar strings, if you've seen, have a little ball at the end here. Not sure if you can see that. There's a little ball at the end. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put our bottle back in place where it's going to go, right around there. And I'm going to pass the string through my eye hook and through this loop here, this little ball at the end of the string. And that's just going to choke it on to this eye hook. and then it shouldn't move after that. Again, like I said, you can just use a wire. You could just tie this on here. It doesn't have to be fixed on here the way that I'm doing it. I just like to do it like this because it's a little tighter. Next, we're going to come through to the other side, pass it over our bottle, and we're going to pass it through our tuner here, if I can get it in. We're going to pass it through the tuner like this, and we're going to tune it up, tightening up our string a little bit. As you tighten it, your little loop here is going to tighten and loosen the string. That's alright. Just get her good and tight. You can already hear that starting to make a little bit of a sound. Before you get it too tight though, you want to try and get this into its place. In this case, I like to try and put it right underneath the string here. So I actually tightened it a little bit too much already. I'll loosen it back just a bit, and we'll try and get this directly underneath our string, just like so. And the tension of that string is going to hold it in its place. So we'll tighten it back up. And the first time you tune it, it's going to take a little bit because it is stretching that string for the first time. Like you just heard there. So there you go. That is a diddly bow. All we have to do now is plug it in and try it. So right here I have my amp hooked up. Try and tune it up just a little bit more. I'm just going to turn up my amp a little bit. And now we have a diddly bow. Click this pedal here and I can get my volume control. There we go. Now we have Who says you have to buy a guitar? Hey guys, we're back. Sorry, not quite sure what happened there. Anyway, so that's our diddly bow. Pretty easy. And in about 10 minutes, you have yourself your own electric guitar. Now, we're just going to put the camera back up for a second, and I'll show you the other couple of examples here that I have. Bring you guys back up. All right. So I like to think of that as kind of like the medium range of diddly bows. You know, it took me about 15 minutes maybe. The other thing you can do here, this is somewhere along the very simple range. This took me about 5 minutes to make. This is a little board, 1x4. It's about 20 inches long. I have a screw, a small screw here, a little can here, and a longer screw here. And like I said, this one here I just tied on. I didn't get all fancy with a tuner. I just put 3 screws and a can. This one's more of an acoustic one. But unfortunately, you don't have the ability to tune this one. So if you wanted to change the tuning of this, for example, I just have a slide here in my hand. You can put it underneath the string, pry it up a little bit, and now you have a very different sound. So that's basically the base model of a diddly bow. Then I have here, this is a diddly bow that I probably put maybe an hour, hour and a half into. Has strap buttons on it, obviously. So this one here, what I did, as opposed to using your your eye hook for the bridge, I use what are called furls, guitar furls. So the string passes through here and is held in place by that. The string then passes over this here. This is an old McDonald's cigarette can. This replaces our bottle. And inside of this, I've actually put the pickup sealed inside of here. The jack is on this side, and I actually have a volume knob on this one here. This one here also has a .45 caliber bullet as the nut. I have a tuner installed, but I installed it recessed the proper way behind. I actually even marked out where all of my frets would have been. This is 12 and then up to 24. So we actually have an instrument that goes up to 2 octaves in scale. And it has strap buttons, so you can just... I'll plug this one in as well, and we'll show you what this one sounds like. Now, I am by no means a diddly bow player. If you want to go and check out some cool diddly bow players, Jack Johnson is one on YouTube. So is Seasick Steve. He does a lot of really cool things as well. Also add some cool effects to it. So that's it, guys. That's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will go out and build yourself a diddly bow, because nobody says you have to buy a guitar. This is primarily why I got into building guitars, was because I was tired of buying them. And why not, you know? An hour, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. You can spend as much time as you want on it. And it's an instrument all your own. And like I said, I encourage you to go out and look at different ways to build them. Different things that you can use for the bridges and the tail pieces and bottles, you know. If you can find an old cool old Mountain Dew bottle, why not? So thanks very much, everybody, for being here and taking part in this video. Again, I just want to thank Kaza one more time for putting out these live sessions highlighting the heritage and culture. And if you have something that you can contribute to the Heritage and Cultural Trail for English speakers, that'll be launched this year, contact Crystal from Kaza. The number is 418-375-9070, or by email, crystal@kaza-gaspe.com. That's it, guys. Thanks very much for being a part of this, and until next time.